All right, welcome back. My name is Dave. This is the Radical Independent. Thanks for being here today. Special guest on the show today, one of the channel's probably best guests for sure. He's a researcher, he's an author, he's an analyst, he's an activist, and he's also got a great Substack. And he's been doing a lot of great research on the WHO. And please welcome back James Roguski. James, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'll take the title of second best guest because I know you've got some other folks who are really, really good, especially about Ukraine and things like that. So keep me at number two, and I'll be trying harder. It's probably more than 6 months ago that I think you were one of the first people to give me let me put my voice out there for what's going on. And David, I'm having a case of deja vu because the WHO is at it again. And
Yep.
Here's what's happening, people, because it's complicated. This might end up being a little bit longer interview because it's just complicated, but hopefully we'll condense it as much as possible.
Yeah, let's get right into it.
The WHO, under the guise of something called the International Health Regulations Review Committee, is meeting in Geneva this week privately. They don't like to say secretly, privately, to discuss 14 separate proposals from 14 nations to amend international health regulations. And I'm just going to say that again, okay?
Yeah.
The International Health Regulations Review Committee, IHRRC, is meeting secretly in Geneva discussing amendments that have been proposed by 14 separate nations to change the international health regulations, which is international law. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, 6 months or so ago, you gave me a chance to talk about the Biden administration submitting one proposal. And in that one proposal, they had amendments to 13 separate articles that are in the regulations. So it all gets confusing. There's amendments and articles and numbers and 13 and 14 and all that kind of stuff. They're trying to change international law, and they're trying to do it in secret. And that pisses me off.
Yeah, as it should.
As it should. Now, they don't necessarily claim to be a democratic institution. We don't elect the delegates to the WHO, but it gets even worse than that. Okay, because the plot thickens, right? Number one, around the world, it's nearly impossible for people in any given nation to find out who represents them before the WHO, who goes to the WHO. Okay.
Yeah. Not confusing.
This past week or so, I literally did a Freedom of Information Act request to the Department of Health and Human Services saying, really, really simple one. I did a bunch of them. We'll talk about it, but I did one. And it's like, could you give me the list of people who are in our delegation that go to the WHO?
I was going to ask you that.
Like, well, I asked them. I did a Foia. I went on their site. They have a Freedom of Information Act request page, and I put in a formal request, and I got a formal answer. Yeah, we don't have that information. I'm like, oh, okay. Can you say runaround, right?
Yeah.
Well, then I replied, and they sent me something else, and they sent me to the WHO website from 2 years ago. The people who went to the World Health Assembly 2 years ago. Literally, our government sent me to a 2-year-old site saying, well, that's who went in the 73rd one 2 years ago. Okay. I was like, well, hell, I could do better than that. I know who went to the last one in May. I don't want to know who was in the delegation. I want to know who's doing it now. Okay.
Right.
Well, I kind of have sort of a clue, and I have a bunch of email addresses, and I send them emails all the time, and nobody ever replies. Okay. And I know they're members. I know they're part of the delegation because I see them on videos and I see them talking. Okay. But I wanted an official answer. It should have just been, oh, you big dummy, Jim, just go to this webpage right here, and that's where we list all the members or all the delegates. No, government runaround. Okay, fine. So what's going on here is in the May World Health Assembly, May 2022, essentially what happened was the Biden administration had very quietly, some would say secretly, submitted amendments to the international health regulations back in January. And the word got out, thanks to you and many other people. And Biden's amendments got kicked to the curb. They didn't even get discussed. There was a whole different set of amendments that ended up getting discussed and passed, and arguably is a mixed bag, and it could have been a little bit beneficial. In my opinion, they gave up a little something, but they got more sovereignty. The nations got more sovereignty to have more control than they had before they got there. Well, now it's that times 14. There are 14 nations who have submitted proposals that are currently being kept secret. One gentleman that I know in the United Kingdom, back in May of this year, when that was all happening, he put in a United Kingdom request for information. And they delayed and they delayed and they delayed. And he's done it again, and they did the exact same thing all over again. So he asked for this information, these proposed amendments by the 14 nations. And the response was, yeah, we got them, but we're not going to give them to you because, they were given to us in confidence. and if we were to make them public, it would harm our relationships with the WHO and all of the other member nations. Okay. Well, I got news for the United Kingdom. They're not giving it to the people is going to harm their relationship with their people.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, but Dave, it gets worse than that.
No.
Okay. So back in May, what the World Health Assembly did, and a little bit of what I'm saying is documented fact. I can tell you exactly what they did, and then I'm going to take a little guess as to why they did it. Okay. They set up or they changed the name of a working group within the WHO. It had been called the Working Group for Pandemic Response.
Yeah.
WGPR. They changed the name to the Working Group for Amendments to the International Health Regulations, WGIHR. And they set it on a course to meet in a couple of weeks, November 14th and 15th, to discuss amendments to the IHR, because they didn't, and this is where I'm speculating a little bit. I don't think they appreciated the United States trying to sneak it through, keep it quiet, ram it through, maybe hope people aren't paying attention, not reading all the details. And I think that many of the member nations said, hey, wait a minute. We don't just want you quietly shoving through amendments. Let's have a working group. Let's discuss this. Let's, talk about it, reach some kind of consensus, and then we'll bring it to the next May assembly. Well, that group was supposed to meet the 14th and the 15th of November coming up. The deadline for all of the member nations to submit proposed amendments was September 30th, which is about a month ago. Okay.
Right.
Well, as per the rules of the international health regulations, sort of, but not really, Tedros Ghebreyesus, and I call it Dictator General of the World Hypnosis Organization,
yeah,
Director General of the WHO, created and appointed a review committee, okay? The International Health Regulations Review Committee, IHRRC, okay? Now, normally a review committee, after all of these 14 proposals maybe got hashed out and, they're horse trading and we want this and, oh, we agree with you, we don't agree with you, the working group for the IHR and all of the delegates were supposed to have a meeting and they were supposed to start those negotiations. Well, for some reason, Tedros created a panel of, I forget if it's 18 or 19 people, handpicked, cherry-picked, quote unquote experts, fine, upstanding men and women, the greatest resumes, you could imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. To step in and have a week of secret deliberations, of which we are in the middle of right now. Okay. It's probably 5 p.m. in Geneva, so they're probably closing up shop for the day. Today was the one day that this secret review committee was going to invite the United Nations and the delegates and all of the Bill and Melinda Gates foundations and all of the quote unquote relevant stakeholders to have a nice little chit chat in Geneva to decide our future with these amendments. Okay. Well, review committees like that are typically after the deliberative body of all of our delegates have decided on something. They would look it over and dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure all the references are right and give advice to the director general. Okay, give them the executive summary, they reviewed it, here's what's going on. But he stuck them in the middle, actually, before the negotiations even began. And they're only supposed to deal with technical details. They're supposed to be experts dealing with technical stuff. They were tasked with essentially writing, changing it, deleting it, essentially doing the negotiations on behalf of Tedros, as opposed to letting we, the people and our delegates, and, even though they're not elected and we don't have any feedback with them, each of the member nations are going to walk into a meeting in November where most of the horse trading negotiations have already been done, because even though they say that they're only preparing this now, and they have another meeting at the end of November, meaning the review committee does, and then they have another week-long secret meeting in January, their goal is to submit a unified proposal to the director general by January 15th, which is 4 months in advance of the World Health Assembly. And then they say, yeah, and then we're going to wait until 2024.
Yeah.
It's like, I really don't think that that's what you guys are really going to do. I think you're going to try to shove this thing through. I think you're trying to put it all together now, and do it all in secret and make it be a done deal and hope that nobody's paying any attention. Okay. And so thank you, Dave, for, we don't know what is in the 14 nations proposals. Some of them were proposed on behalf of a number of nations, like Czechoslovakia. I'm sorry, I'm part Slovak, and my family, we always spoke of Czechoslovakia. Now it's two separate countries. The Czech Republic apparently is the president of, or is the whatever presiding nation,
presiding officer. Yeah,
whatever the proper title is. Forgive me.
Sorry.
It's a rotating thing, and so they submitted a proposal on behalf of the member nations of the European Union. Uruguay did the same thing for a trade group called Mercosur in South America. And here's, Dave, you're going to have to move out of the way.
All right.
South Africa, you're going to have to find Eswatini.
All right.
Okay.
Whoops.
There's a little small nation, landlocked nation in the northeast corner of South Africa, Eswatini. Submitted a proposal on behalf of the African region, 50 or 60 nations, and the Russian Federation on behalf, or Russia on behalf of the Russian Federation, handful of nations still aligned with Russia. So there's this possibility that they're all going to get together and kumbaya, and everybody's going to come out happy, and they're going to have a whole bunch of amendments that are going to get shoved down the world's throat. And I'm an optimist. Maybe they're going to have something that's absolutely fantastic, and I'm just going to be like, wow, the world shifted while I was asleep, and I'm in a new fantasy land now, and everything's great and wonderful. Or they're going to try to shove something down our throats that is like all the other stuff they've been trying to shove down our throats. And so there's a possibility that the United States and the EU and other nations versus, North versus South here, it may be a little bit of a battle. Are the US and the EU in alignment with what South America and Africa are proposing? And then there's Russia.
Yeah.
Okay. and so
In fact, there's the entire new what I call the BRICS, or not. I didn't coin the phrase, but you got Brazil, Russia, India, China, Saudi Arabia, right? And they're looking for autonomy, and that's the new world. That's the true new world order. That's
and
coming to
BRICS is
fruition.
actually interesting because it was Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and then Saudi Arabia. So I think they should call it BRICSA, right?
Okay. I may
Because
have
they
had
got
the
two,
S. Maybe I've got the S wrong. I don't know. Saudi Arabia goes kind of back and forth, but they
Saudi
have.
Arabia, yeah, just came out, but it should maybe it should be BRICSASA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
South America, I'm sorry, South Africa and Saudi Arabia.
it's a
So
powerful. That's a powerful block of countries, and I'm actually hoping that they have their own proposals, Jim, that go against what I think is going to be a complete disaster. But that's why we have you on, because you're doing the research, and I'm sure you're going to be like the first guy to find out what they're actually planning.
I'll certainly be one of the first to make us think about it. And so to summarize, okay, what's going on is nations around the world have answered the call that they started back in May, which was, hey, we don't want just the United States shoving through amendments. We want all of us to be involved. The deadline for them to submit that was September 30th. They were supposed to meet for the first time to talk about it in a couple of weeks, November 14th and 15th. But Tedros gets this review committee to have a week-long secret meetings, which probably the third one just ended now, and they'll go on Thursday and Friday this week. And the structure of review committees in the international health regulations is they report directly to Tedros. Okay. They don't have to make any of this public. There is no plan. There is no like, oh yeah, there'll be public comment, next month or nothing. This is completely secret. And man, I don't know anybody who, if you say to them, hey, did you know that so and so was keeping a secret from such and such? It doesn't matter what the topic is. They're like, what is it? Okay, we want to know.
Right.
And so I've put in Foia requests both to the State Department, and I did a total of 3 Foia requests to the Health and Human Services Department. One was the quickest rejection imaginable, the one I mentioned. Oh no, we don't know who our delegates are. I was like, okay, fine. I got a very
Does anyone believe that, by the way, before we move on? Let's stress that point. Does anyone believe that they don't know?
There always is the ongoing question: is it evil or is it incompetence? Okay?
Or both?
Or both, but I put in a specific request for these proposed amendments, and for all I know, Dave, as we're speaking, the working group for the international health regulations may have posted them up on their website, and I'll go look later today. I'm like, oh shit, Dave, there it is, right?
Yeah.
We have to talk again. Let me analyze what they're doing, and we'll see what's going on.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's a big old secret, and we, the people, have nothing to say about it. They are in a back room somewhere. There may or may not be cigar smoke filling the room, but
I mean, you on your latest Substack used a famous George Carlin quote, and I know you know it well. It's a big club, and we're not in it. We try to find out who's in the club. That's what James Roguski is trying to do. He's trying to find out who's actually in the club. Yeah. So I appreciate your research. Any parting?
It goes deeper, Dave.
So there's more. You sounded like you were summarizing, so I didn't mean to cut you off. Please continue.
They're doing. That's what they're doing. I'm going to share my screen.
All right.
And so here's what I'm doing, and I invite everyone else to help. Okay.
Yes.
Hey, the WHO is secretly trying to amend international health regulations. If that's the thing, why don't we, the people, do the same thing? And so I've got a daily Zoom meeting. Okay. You're all invited from wherever you may be on the planet. It's noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. and whatever time that may be around the world. Um, Essentially, we're writing the People's Amendments. And I'm going to scroll down here a ways. We've had a handful of meetings. And quite frankly, the WHO is just out of control. And
Yeah.
we're not answerable to them if we don't have a say in what they're doing. That's how democracy works. Okay. It's not totalitarian dictatorship. I mean, that's what they would like it to be. They think they know better. They want to change everything. And so here's what we're doing. Scrolling down here away. Step number one is defining terms. And there's no reason why most people would know this, but the first article in the document that is the international health regulations is all definition of terms. There's like 5 pages of words that they define. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of words that need to be defined. Okay. Like approved and authorized.
Yeah.
And what is a case? Okay. Is a case, just, oh, somebody stuck something up your nose and ran it through a laboratory and they say you're sick. Okay.
Yeah. Easy with that nose commentary, but proceed.
What is the case fatality rate? Well, number one, how do you define the cause of death? There's a lot of controversy there. And, if you don't know how to define a case and you don't know how to properly attribute death, how can you do the math of dividing one by the other? Okay. Efficacy. Okay, Dave, here, I'll leave everybody with just a really simple one. Okay. You've probably heard the word efficacy, but there's also this word effectiveness.
Yeah.
They are not the same.
No.
They are not the same. Okay. And so in addition to defining terms like safe and effective and other words that we won't talk about,
correct.
Article 2 in the amendments defines the scope of the amendments. I'm sorry, of the regulations.
Okay.
And most people are unaware that the international health regulations in some ways are not all that bad. Okay. The purpose of the IHR, this is the current text, the purpose and scope of these regulations are to prevent, protect against, control, and provide a public health response to the international spread of disease in ways that are commensurate and with and restricted to public health risks, and which avoid unnecessary interference with international traffic and trade.
Yeah.
Well, if they had just followed the purpose of the IHRs, okay, life would have probably been a lot better over the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, if they actually meant what they wrote right there.
And so in addition to inviting everybody to give me a phone call at 310-619-3055, or go to my Substack, James Roguski, JamesRoguski.substack.com. You can also go to thepeoplesamendments.com. And if you want to have a say, I'll listen to you. I mean, they're not gonna, okay? No. And we've got a decent rough draft of words that have been stolen from us that we're trying to capture back their proper meaning. Okay. Wish me luck. I know
it's been James, that's been the battle, the last like 100 years, where words don't.
Yeah, well, certainly since book 1984 pointed out that that's how they're going to get you, is they're going to change the meaning of words.
Right.
And so go to thepeoplesamendments.com. If you have a suggestion, put it in the comments, call me, join our Zoom. Looking for people who, it's one thing to say, David, and this is how I was raised. If you see something that's wrong, say something about it, point it out. But it's better to also show up with an alternative solution.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we know that they're trying to amend these regulations. The fear is that they're going to amend them in ways that only make them worse for us, better for them, worse for us. Okay. But if you don't know what you want, okay, and you don't have it in writing, you're in a very weak position. Okay. So I'm open to people communicating with me. Most people don't even know that this is going on. They don't know that the regulations are a thing. And they're getting all of this confused with something called the pandemic treaty, which is for another show, because we've talked about that many times. That's not this. Okay.
Right.
This is what they're using the pandemic treaty, which is a real thing and it's a serious concern. But anytime you hear somebody say pandemic treaty, that's a decoy to distract you from what we're talking about here. And this thing could easily be on the fast track, and next May, boom, could be law. And it's a lot easier to talk about it now than after they've put it into international law and you're trying to get it to be repealed. That's not the best approach. So little early warning for everybody. Check it all out on the Substack. And if you have any interest whatsoever in helping craft a response to this, but at the very least, step number one is awareness. And so, share the daylights out of this video, and appreciate your time, Dave.
Yeah. Again, thanks for being here, James. Valuable information as always. And again, James laid it out there for everybody. I think the next action step is just to be engaged, get involved. We're in a political season as well. So, whoever's running for dog catcher,
ask anybody who's running, about this.
Yeah.
And take a picture of the deer in the headlight eyes that you get as a response. I did have an opportunity to speak with Christine Anderson, who's a member of the European Parliament, about this.
Yeah.
And so it's not just the United States. If you know somebody in Costa Rica, somebody in Ecuador, or Trinidad and Tobago, or wherever, they need to be pushing too, because it affects everyone. And so I don't know what the prize is for the first person who gets the documents and shares them with me. Okay. But it's a secret, and we want to know what the secret is. We want to know what they're proposing. And until we do, I'm going to be a bulldog about it. It's like, I want to know what they're hiding.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being out there, James. You do a ton of research. A lot of us would try to do the same thing. Our eyes would glaze over, and we would become part of the World Hypnosis Organization. We'd become just charter members. So we appreciate what you're doing, and thanks again for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.